I'd like to welcome Daniel Brandes from the Crown Attorney's Office to discuss the Toronto Mental Health Court. The why and how and impacts of the Toronto Mental Health Court shall be discussed, including challenges, successes, and best practice recommendations. Welcome, Daniel.
Thank you so much. I just want to make sure that everyone can hear me okay. My technology sometimes is problematic, so does it sound all right?
Sounds good.
Okay, great. I feel very fortunate to be here today. I've been the dedicated Crown in the Mental Health Court at Old City Hall since about the midpoint of 2018, and was able to preside there, have been presiding there over some very challenging times during COVID when everything shut down and we went virtual. But maybe what I'll do is just describe for you what the bulk of our work is in the mental health court. So it's one of the only dedicated mental health courts in the criminal justice system in the country, as far as I'm aware. It's one of the very few. And the bulk of our work relates to cases involving fitness to stand trial. So people who've been charged with criminal offenses, who are laboring under significant mental health disturbances that interfere with their ability to meaningfully participate in the criminal process. Those cases come into the mental health court at Old City Hall, which is now in 102 Court, but soon will be very different as we move into the new Toronto courthouse, the amalgamated court at 10 Armory Street. But when those cases do come into our court, we have the good fortune of having forensic psychiatrists who attend on a daily basis to conduct assessments. So they assess people who are thought to be unfit to stand trial, and the mechanism by which those people are assessed involves the issuance of a Form 48. And the Form 48 gives the authority to the forensic psychiatrist to assess an accused person to determine their fitness. And those psychiatrists who come on a daily basis then are in a position to provide evidence on a viva voce basis. So they come and take the witness stand, they testify in court about the assessment. And in the event that a person is found unfit to stand trial, the Crown often applies for a treatment order. And the treatment order is an extraordinary remedy that's provided for in the criminal code. The treatment order is essentially forced treatment. And the aim, of course, is to bring the accused person back to a state of fitness so that they can appreciate the nature and consequences of the proceedings themselves and participate in them meaningfully. So that's the one of the primary objectives of 102 Court, the mental health court, is to assist people who are unfit to stand trial and coming back to a state of fitness through these extraordinary sections that the criminal code provides in part 20.1. The other very significant part of our work is the diversion program, the mental health diversion program. And that's really, I think, one of the most gratifying areas of the work that the mental health court does. So basically you have a significant number of people who've been charged with criminal offenses who come into this court, and it's been identified that there's a nexus between their mental health condition and the alleged offenses that they're charged with. There's an understanding too, that the level of moral culpability is significantly diminished for people who are not only facing or laboring under significant diagnoses, but also people who are facing other challenges, other concurrent disorders, substance use issues, insecure housing, homelessness. So a very large group of people come into 102 Court for the purposes of working towards the diversion of their charges. And we're blessed in that court to have other care providers and service providers connected to us. So for now in 102 Court, we have the Fred Victor Mental Health Court program. And we have a whole roster of wonderful court workers who meet with the the people who are doing the diversion work and basically act as the quarterbacks for their rehabilitative programs, their counseling, connecting them with housing services. I think everybody who is involved in this panel and is taking part in this conference appreciates that there is a very significant lack of resources in the community right now, in all areas, whether it comes to issues of shelter, medical services. So it's been a very, very challenging time, particularly over the COVID period, over the pandemic. I'm hoping that conditions are going to start to improve, but we're also looking at a very significant change to 102 Court because Old City Hall is being shut down at the end of May, and all of these services, this court is basically being transposed into the new courthouse. My understanding is courtrooms 806 and 807 are going to be the designated mental health courts at the new Toronto courthouse. And the model for the court at the moment, I think, should be the same. I think that's the plan, but it remains to be seen whether or not we'll continue to have the benefit of the dedicated and specialized crowns and judges who preside in that court. And I say that because there's, I think it's been well recognized and understood that the consistency of having the same people in the court who get to know the clients, and I'd rather refer to them as clients rather than accused, but you know, having the same people who get to know them, develop relationships, and that kind of continuity goes a long way towards not only establishing but promoting the therapeutic benefits and effects that this diversion program offers to people. And I think one of the hallmarks of the mental health court, particularly when it comes to the diversion work that we do, is that it's a much less adversarial process. The goal is not to seek sort of what the fit punishment might be, but rather to come up with a plan for each person who's going through diversion to assist them in addressing the underlying issues that led to their charges. I mean, invariably, it relates to a mental health problem, but that's always just one of the issues that these people are dealing with. And so the beauty of the diversion program in the mental health court is that it allows for sort of a multifaceted approach. We're not just dealing with one issue; we're dealing with all kinds of challenges that the clients are facing, and the court workers and the various organizations that are connected to them work very hard to assist the clients in addressing those underlying issues. And then the ultimate goal at the end of the diversion is for those issues to be addressed as much as they can, for the client to sort of avoid any further charges, achieve stability in the community, and then ultimately the Crown has the ability, once that has been achieved, to withdraw the charges that have been laid or to ask the court to stay the charges. And that's sort of the ultimate goal of diversions, to see people getting to a better place, to a place where they're not as likely to come into conflict with the justice system, and to have their charges either stayed or withdrawn. And it's been a very gratifying experience working in that court for the last few years. Progress is rarely linear. Oftentimes we see people who do well for a period of time and then sort of fall off or fall away. But the beauty of the court that we've tried to sort of foster is to sort of keep the door open and ensure that there's an appreciation for the fact that people have ups and downs, and we try as much as we can to give people wide latitude, appreciating the lack of resources that exist in the community. So that's sort of the nature of the work that we do in the dedicated mental health court. My sincere hope is that the tenor and character of the court is going to be maintained as we move into this brave new world of the amalgamated court. And it remains to be seen what effect this amalgamation is going to have. I anticipate it's going to increase our numbers significantly. I'm hoping that the resources that are going to be available will also increase significantly, but that remains to be seen. In terms of best practices, I guess what I would suggest, and this is for any of the defense counsel who are with us, and even any of the other service providers, whether it's mental health workers or housing workers in the community, or anyone else associated. I think what I would encourage is for there to be as much communication as possible between the various stakeholders involved in that court. Sort of the open flow of communication and the appreciation that this is a less adversarial system, I think allows for the best outcomes. I think also ensuring that people come in person. I mean, we have the Zoom capabilities and the Zoom platform available to us, but having that face-to-face connection, sort of the intimacy of being together in the same room, I think also goes a long way to increasing the sort of benefits, the therapeutic effect, so to speak, of the interactions that we have. So I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has them, but that's sort of the nuts and bolts of what we do in the mental health court, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. I can see that some are coming up.
Mr. Brandeis, I'll let Keisha check for any questions, but your comment that about intimacy of being together being an important factor, it goes back to, I think, all of our understanding and belief at this point that relationships are key, that all this healing and all this change and everything comes through relationship. I got to the point where I'm thinking that there isn't anything out there that's valuable and helpful unless it is coming through human to human contact. Human relationships is everything for us human beings. And I can tell you from healing and being helped and rescued by professionals like yourself, it's those relationships. They just mean so much. And so that intimacy you're talking about is precious. Thank you for getting that right.
Thanks, Mr. Boland.
I do have one question and two comments. So I'll do the question first. So who are the members of the mental health court team? Does that include the court workers in the diversion program, and are the court workers paid?
Yeah, absolutely. So the members of the team really include the judiciary, the Crown, duty counsel most often, lots of private counsel who are sort of have specializations in the area and come often to the court. But integral, absolutely integral to the team are the mental health court workers. At the moment, it's the Fred Victor Mental Health Court program that's working in 102. But I know as we move into the new courthouse, there will be other organizations like the CMHA, CODA, all kinds of other organizations who are going to come together and try and work together to continue in this sort of, especially with the diversion program. And then we also have the benefit of CAMH being connected with us as well. And they have a contract with our court and sort of a memorandum of understanding. And they're the ones who provide not only the forensic psychiatrists who conduct the fitness assessments, but also they have doctors who come twice a week to our court to interview people, meet with people, and assess them to see their suitability for the diversion program. So they get referrals from all kinds of different courts for individuals to come and be assessed. So it's a multidisciplinary group, multifaceted, and everybody's sort of integral to the process.
Thank you. I do have another question that came in. Does this court serve youth also? And what is the criteria for being eligible for this court? Are certain offenses excluded?
Yeah, excellent question. So I've never, in my 5 years working in the court, I have yet to deal with a youth matter. And that's I think that's, I just actually received an email about that from a colleague recently asking about what facilities are available to assess young people with respect to fitness. I would imagine that the court, 102 court, the mental health court, is flexible enough to be able, in rare circumstances, to address youth matters, but generally speaking, we don't. It's been adults almost entirely since I've been there. What was the other part of the question? I apologize. I know there was another element to the question. The criteria for eligibility for diversion. I think that was it.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
So there are certain charges that are presumptively not eligible for diversion, and the Crown policy directive sort of outlines them. But in a nutshell, driving offenses for the most part are not eligible. Offenses involving significant bodily harm are not eligible. Usually domestic violence charges are not eligible. So in essence, the more serious matters, the more serious charges are presumptively not eligible for diversion. But it's important to recognize that the door is not absolutely closed. There's certain circumstances, rare circumstances, where even significant charges can be considered for diversion if the factors suggest that it's appropriate in the circumstances. And oftentimes we reach out to complainants, we reach out to police officers, we reach out to members of the community to get input, where in those rare circumstances where those presumptively ineligible charges are being considered. It's important, certainly for the Crown, to get input from the various stakeholders involved in that particular case. So usually the people involved in the diversion program are people who've been charged with offenses that are on the spectrum, not as serious.
Thank you for answering. So I have 2 comments based on your presentation. So it's so important to deal with multiple issues because research tells us that mental health issues are generally not the key or proximal factor or risk factors for offending. It is also so important that we retain dedicated judges and other team members who have specialized training and experience thinking of the model or process that will be rolled out in the new courthouse. So those are the comments, and you were thanked profusely in the chat for your presentation.
I'd like to thank you too, Mr. Brandes. You're mentioning, I have one comment. I think it's very positive. You're mentioning your partnership with CAMH. It was 40 years ago that I was on the streets of Toronto, and I did have to go to the old City Hall courthouse a couple of times, and didn't always get there when I was supposed to and stuff like that. And the only help that I ever got out on the streets during my 8 years in Toronto was a CAMH, a blind counselor, and it was called Addiction Research Foundation back then, and they're our top addiction and mental health research hospital in Canada. And I just want to honor the work that they did with me in the past and that they're still doing with you. So thank you very much.